The summit chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed approximately 4,317 diplomatic missions over its 2 millennia of operation. I had personally attended 942 of them. Not once in all those tedious cycles had I ever seen an ambassador arrive wearing what appeared to be a decorative noose around their neck. Yet here stood Kade Merrick, the first human diplomat, adjusting this bizarre fabric constraint with fingers that seemed completely unbothered by the restriction of blood flow to his brain. "Good morning, distinguished members of the Council," he said, pronouncing each word with the careful precision of someone who had practiced this speech exactly 300 times in front of a mirror. "I'm honored to represent humanity in our petition for membership in the Galactic Cooperative." The Threll ambassador, a gelatinous being whose name translated roughly to shimmer of authority across multiple planes of existence, began making a sound that I had learned indicated profound amusement. Within moments, the entire left section of the chamber had joined in. The humans called this phenomenon laughter. We called it the involuntary expulsion of air to indicate social superiority. Kade Merrick stood there, his primitive bipedal frame somehow maintaining perfect stillness while chaos erupted around him. His facial expression did not change. This, I would later learn, was a warning sign that every species in the galaxy should have recognized. But we did not recognize it. We were fools. "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Vril of the Cortaxian hierarchy, her triple-jointed mandibles clicking with barely suppressed mockery, "the human could explain why his species believes they deserve a seat among civilizations that have mastered faster-than-light travel for longer than his planet has had multicellular organisms." Kade smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made my secondary nervous system fire warning signals to organs I did not even know could experience dread. "Absolutely," he replied, touching a device on his wrist that projected a holographic display into the center of the chamber. "Let me start with a little context about Earth." The display showed a blue and green sphere spinning lazily in the void. It looked unremarkable, boring, even. Just another Class M planet with standard oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and disappointingly predictable geological formations. "Earth is what we call a death world," Kade continued, his voice carrying that peculiar human quality of sounding completely calm, while delivering information that should have been accompanied by alarm klaxons. "Our gravity is 1.3 times what you've established as the galactic standard. Our atmospheric pressure would crush most of your species within minutes. And our wildlife—" He paused, pressing another button. The hologram changed to show a creature with hundreds of teeth arranged in rows, swimming through dark water with the casual efficiency of something that had never questioned its position at the top of the food chain. "This is what we call a shark. We swim with them recreationally." The Threll ambassador stopped shimmering with amusement. Kade pressed the button again. A massive furred creature with claws the length of my primary manipulation appendages filled the display. "Grizzly bear. We camp in their territory for fun." Next slide. "Snake. Venomous enough to kill an adult human in 4 minutes. We keep them as pets." Next. "Box jellyfish. Transparent. Nearly invisible. Lethal enough to stop a heart. We swim in oceans filled with them." Next. "Hippopotamus. Adorable looking, right? Kills more humans per year than any other large land animal. We built observation platforms so tourists can watch them." The chamber had grown very, very quiet. "Now," Kade said, his smile growing wider, "you might be wondering why I'm telling you all this. After all, every planet has dangerous fauna, but here's the thing that makes Earth special. We didn't just survive these creatures, we thrived alongside them. We studied them, we learned from them, and in some cases we domesticated their relatives and turned them into companions." He clicked to a new image. A small, fluffy creature with oversized eyes stared out from the hologram. "This is a dog, descended from wolves. We invited them into our homes, we let them sleep in our beds. We consider them family members, because humans, you see, have a very particular talent. We can befriend anything. And I do mean anything. I do mean anything." Ambassador Vril leaned forward, her curiosity apparently overriding her condescension. "Surely you exaggerate." "Do I?" Kade's eyebrows raised in a gesture I had learned, indicated rhetorical questioning. "Let me tell you about a human named Marcus Patel, marine biologist. He spent 3 years studying octopi in Earth's oceans. One of them, which he named Gerald, would recognize him on sight, change color in what we interpreted as excitement, and bring him shells as gifts. An octopus. A creature with a completely alien neural structure, a lifespan of only 3 years, and absolutely no evolutionary reason to care about a mammal from dry land. And yet, the hologram shifted again, showing a human in strange underwater breathing apparatus, holding appendages with a creature that looked like it had been designed by a committee that could not agree on what body parts were actually necessary. "We have this saying on Earth," Kade continued. "Anything is edible at least once. Dark humor, yes, but it illustrates something fundamental about human psychology. We approach the unknown, not with fear, but with curiosity. Sometimes stupid curiosity, I'll grant you, but curiosity nonetheless." The Vorshek representative, a crystalline being who communicated through light pulses, flashed a sequence that my translator rendered as, "Your species sounds dangerously reckless." "Oh, we absolutely are," Kade agreed cheerfully. "We're the species that looked at the concept of controlled explosions and thought, let's use this to launch ourselves into space. We're the species that invented extreme sports. We're the species that sees a mountain and thinks, I should climb that for no practical reason whatsoever. We're the species that will eat food so spicy it causes physical pain because we think it tastes good." He paused, letting that sink in. "But here's what that recklessness has bought us. We went from figuring out how to make fire to landing on our moon in less than 12,000 years. We went from the first powered flight to breaking the sound barrier in 44 years. We cracked nuclear fusion, developed quantum computing, and figured out faster than light travel in just under 3 centuries. We did all of this while fighting wars, surviving plagues, and dealing with natural disasters that should have wiped us out a dozen times over." The hologram now showed a montage of images. Humans building structures, humans exploring, humans creating art, humans reaching into the void of space with the same determined expression that probably graced their ancestors' faces when they first decided to see what was on the other side of the mountain. So yes, Ambassador Vril, we're young. We're inexperienced by galactic standards. We probably seem loud, aggressive, and impulsive to species that have been doing this for millennia. But we're also adaptable, creative, and too stubborn to know when we should quit. Kade took a breath, and I noticed that every being in the chamber was now paying complete attention. The mocking laughter had died away like smoke in vacuum. Humanity wants to join the Galactic Cooperative not because we think we're superior, but because we think we can contribute something valuable. We bring a perspective that none of you have. We bring the mindset of a species that had to claw its way to the top of the food chain on a planet that actively tried to kill us every single day. We bring innovation born from desperation. We bring friendship extended to anything willing to accept it. The Threll ambassador made a sound that my translator struggled with, finally settling on, "This is a compelling argument, but words are cheap. How do we know your species can actually handle the responsibilities of council membership?" Kade nodded, as if he had been expecting this exact question. "Fair point. Let me propose something. Give us a test. Any challenge you think appropriate. We'll prove ourselves worthy." Ambassador Vril clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "An interesting proposition. The council will deliberate on—" She never finished that sentence. Because that was when the fire suppression system in the Eastern Wing suffered what the official report would later call a catastrophic cascade failure due to sabotage. What it actually meant was that someone had planted an incendiary device designed to burn hot enough to overwhelm every safety protocol in the building. The first explosion shattered the tranquility of diplomatic procedure like a hammer through glass. Alarms began screaming in 17 different frequencies, each calibrated to the hearing range of different species. Emergency lighting bathed everything in a sickly yellow glow, and through the rapidly spreading smoke, I could see flames eating through the support structures with terrifying speed. Panic erupted. Ambassadors from 36 species began scrambling for exits that were already blocked by debris and fire. The Threll ambassador lost cohesion, her gelatinous form spreading across the floor in a pattern that indicated absolute terror. The Vorshek representative's light pulses became chaotic, random, meaningless. I felt my own survival instincts screaming at me to flee, to find safety, to abandon anyone who might slow me down. This was the natural response of every sane being when confronted with immediate death. Kade Merrick did not flee. He stood there for exactly 2.3 seconds, his eyes moving rapidly as he assessed the situation. Then he moved, and I understood in that moment that humans did not simply survive their death world. They had been forged by it into something that other species could barely comprehend. "Everyone stay calm," he shouted. his voice cutting through the chaos with surprising authority. "The main exits are blocked, but there's always another way out." He pulled the decorative noose from around his neck with one sharp motion, wrapped it around his hand, and punched through a decorative panel that I had passed approximately 4,000 times without ever considering what might be behind it. Emergency maintenance access. Of course. Vril.
Can you move?
He was already at the Threll ambassador's side, not waiting for an answer.
I need you to pull yourself together.
Literally. That's it. Good. Now follow me. He grabbed a ceremonial staff from a nearby display, used it to prop open the access panel, and began directing species towards safety with the efficiency of someone who had practiced disaster scenarios more times than diplomatic speeches. Vorshek representative, dim your light pulses. You're overwhelming everyone's vision.
Yes. Better. Now move.
Krillian delegates, help the Arthax ambassador. Their respiratory system can't handle this smoke.
Move. Move. Move.
I stood there, frozen by the sheer audacity of watching a species we had been mocking minutes earlier take command of a situation that had reduced seasoned diplomats to gibbering terror. Kade noticed me. Of course he noticed me. Ambassador Talrix of the Mexarian Confederation, right? He somehow remembered my name despite meeting approximately 40 different beings that morning. I need your help. Can you reach that fire suppression override panel? He pointed to a control system mounted high on the wall, well above human reach but perfectly positioned for my species' longer limbs. I moved. I did not decide to move. My body simply obeyed the command in his voice, the absolute certainty that he knew what he was doing. Hit the manual override, the big purple button. Yes, that one. I pressed it. Nothing happened. The flames continued their hungry advance. Kade cursed in a language my translator did not recognize, which was probably for the best. Fright Plan B. Everyone who can't handle heat, get into that maintenance corridor now. Anyone who can take elevated temperatures, stay with me. We're going to make our own exit. He picked up a section of broken debris, some sort of ceremonial sculpture that had shattered in the blast, and approached the external wall. The wall that was designed to withstand meteor impacts and military-grade weapons. You cannot possibly, I began. He smiled that terrible smile again. Ambassador Talrix, the thing about humans is we don't know what's impossible until after we've already done it. Now, I need you to tell me, is this wall structural or decorative? Decorative. The actual hull is 3 meters beyond. Perfect. He hefted the debris like a weapon. Everyone stand back. What happened next would become the subject of official inquiry, 3 separate academic studies, and at least 1 religion founded by a species that apparently needed something new to worship. Kade Merrick did not simply strike the wall. He analyzed it first, running his fingers along the surface with the careful attention of someone who understood that brute force without intelligence was just noise. He found a seam where 2 decorative panels joined, tapped it twice with his knuckles, and nodded to himself as if the wall had just confirmed something he suspected. The panels are designed to look seamless, but they have to account for thermal expansion, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Which means weak points at the joints. Talrix, I need your species' technical specifications. How much force can those manipulation appendages of yours generate? My throat sacs inflated with surprise. Approximately 900 kilograms of pressure per square centimeter, but I fail to see how that's relevant when we should be evacuating through the maintenance corridor. Because the maintenance corridor leads to the central hub, which is where the fire started, Kade said, still examining the wall. Check your layout maps. That corridor is a death trap. We go that way, we're walking into an inferno that's only gonna get worse. We need to go through this wall, get to the exterior hull, and use the emergency airlocks. Ambassador Vril, who had managed to reconstitute herself into something resembling her normal form, pulsed with obvious distress. The emergency airlocks are 17 levels down. We'll never reach them before the fire spreads. We're not going down, Kade replied. We're going up. The summit chamber was built at the tower's peak specifically for symbolic reasons, right? Pride of place, top of the structure, closer to the stars, and all that poetic garbage. The Vorsek representative flashed. Your point, human. My point is that this building has external maintenance pods for cleaning and repairs. I saw them when we landed. They're magnetically locked to rails that run the entire exterior of the tower. We get to one of those pods, we ride it down to safety while the fire department figures out how to stop this blaze from turning the entire structure into the galaxy's most expensive bonfire. I felt my respiratory systems constrict. That is insane. Those pods are designed for automated drones, not biological passengers. They lack life support. They lack safety restraints. They lack basic structural integrity for anything beyond holding cleaning equipment. Kade looked at me with an expression that I would later learn humans called amused exasperation. Ambassador Talrix, I come from a planet where people jump out of perfectly functional aircraft with nothing but fabric straps and a prayer. We invented something called bungee jumping, where we tie elastic cords to our ankles and throw ourselves off bridges. We have a sport called free climbing, where people scale vertical rock faces without safety equipment because using ropes is apparently too boring. Trust me when I say that riding an exterior maintenance pod down the outside of a building barely registers on the human scale of stupid things we'll do when motivated. The flames were getting closer. I could feel the heat baking through my protective membranes. The smoke was thick enough now that even my species' efficient respiratory filters were struggling. Kade was right. We were out of time for debate. Fine, I hissed. But if we die, I'm filing a formal complaint with the Council of the Dead. Get in line, Kade said. I've got about 15 afterlife bureaucracies that want to have words with me. Now on 3 we both hit this panel junction with everything we've got. 1, 2, 3. The combined force of human determination and Mexarian appendage strength proved sufficient. The decorative panel shrieked, buckled, and finally surrendered to physics. Behind it, as Kade had predicted, was a gap leading to an exterior maintenance shaft. Everyone through, he ordered, already helping the Threll ambassador navigate the opening despite her species' liquid consistency, making the process absurdly complicated. Single file, watch your limbs, tentacles, pseudopods, or whatever appendages your evolution saw fit to give you. Vreel. You're doing great. Just flow through like water. That's it. The species that had been enemies for centuries helped each other through that gap. The Krillian delegates, whose kind had fought a 300-year war with the Yarthax, physically lifted their former adversaries and pushed them to safety. To call the Severi Subinsuias, Seras Rigas. The Seravuman Severi Chevel Severis Olseras and Abtragemic Devertine Sabernoras Yorov. The Vorshek representative used her light pulses to illuminate the path for species with less sophisticated visual organs. And through it all, Kade Merrick moved like someone conducting an orchestra, directing traffic, offering encouragement, and somehow maintaining absolute calm while the building burned around us. We emerged into the maintenance shaft to find exactly what Kade had described. Magnetic rails running along the exterior of the tower, with several automated cleaning pods locked in their docking stations. The pods were roughly cubic, maybe 2 meters on each side, with transparent panels that offered an unobstructed view of the 700-meter drop to the ground below. Oh good, Kade said, examining the nearest pod. They even have manual override controls. Somebody on the design team actually thought about safety protocols. I'm genuinely impressed. Ambassador Vril made a sound that suggested she was considerably less impressed. Those pods are rated for a maximum load of 300 kilograms. I count 47 beings in this group. The mathematics are not encouraging. Kade was already working on the pod's control panel, his fingers moving with the speed of someone who had apparently studied emergency systems during the flight to the summit. You're thinking like someone from a species that follows manufacturer recommendations. Humans have a long and glorious tradition of ignoring weight limits and seeing what happens. Besides, we're not all getting into one pod. We're taking 6 of them, spreading the weight distribution, and hoping the magnetic rails can handle the strain. And if they cannot? I asked. He looked up from the control panel with that terrible smile.
Even we all die together in what will definitely make the top 10 list of most spectacular diplomatic incidents in galactic history. My vote is we try not to die and disappoint the people writing our obituaries. Anyone object? No?
Excellent. Democratic process in action. Ambassador Vril, you and the other liquid-based species get in Pod 1. Your distributed mass will actually work in our favor. Vorshek representative, take the crystalline delegates in Pod 2. Your species can survive hard impacts better than most. Talrix, you're with me in Pod 3 along with anyone whose species evolved from predators. Why predators? Asked a delegate from Sardux Prime whose multiple eyes were dilated with obvious fear. Because predators are used to making split-second decisions about life and death, Kade replied. If something goes wrong during the descent, I need people who can react on instinct rather than deliberating about the optimal course of action. No offense to the herbivore species. You're all lovely. But right now I need beings who understand that sometimes you have to move first and think later. The sorting process took approximately 90 seconds. Kade had an uncanny ability to assess which species would function best under pressure, grouping us with the efficiency of someone who had done this exact thing dozens of times before. Spoiler alert, he had. Humans practice disaster scenarios the way other species practice meditation. They called it emergency preparedness training, and apparently every human child underwent it from early age. Fire drills, earthquake procedures, what to do if your habitat loses pressure, what to do if your vehicle malfunctions, what to do if you encounter a dangerous predator. An entire childhood spent preparing for catastrophic failure. It seemed paranoid, until you needed it. Then it seemed brilliant. Okay, Kade said. Once everyone was loaded, I'm going to release the magnetic lock simultaneously. The pods are going to drop for about half a second before the rail system's gravity compensators kick in. Do not panic during that drop. I repeat, do not panic. The compensators will engage, probably. If they don't, well, it's been an honor meeting you all. That is not reassuring, I pointed out. Wasn't meant to be reassuring. It was meant to be honest. Everyone ready? No. Tough. We're out of time. Releasing locks in 3, 2, 1. The drop was not half a second. It was exactly 1.7 seconds, which I know because my species has an evolutionary adaptation that causes our perception of time to slow during life-threatening situations. Every millisecond of that drop was crystallized in my memory. The sensation of weightlessness, the view of the ground rushing up to meet us, the absolute certainty that we were about to become a very messy historical footnote. Then the compensators engaged with a jolt that would have been uncomfortable if we had not all been certain we were about to die. The pods began descending along the rails at what the display cheerfully informed us was maximum safe velocity, for human-designed equipment that apparently meant faster than any sane species would consider acceptable. Through the transparent panels, I could see the summit chamber above us, flames now visible through multiple windows. The fire had spread faster than even the worst projections. If we had followed standard evacuation procedures, if we had tried to use the main corridors, we would all be dead. The Kade was watching the descent speed on the control panel, one hand resting casually on the emergency brake that I sincerely hoped he would not need to use. So, he said, his voice cutting through the terrified silence with inappropriate casualness. Anyone want to discuss whether humanity deserves council membership, or should we table that conversation until after we've survived the assassination attempt? Assassination attempt? I repeated. You think this was deliberate? Oh, absolutely. Kade tapped the control panel, bringing up a diagnostic display. That fire started in 3 separate locations simultaneously. The suppression systems were sabotaged with precision timing. Someone went to considerable effort to ensure maximum casualties among the council delegates. The question is, who benefits from eliminating approximately 1/3 of the galactic leadership in a single stroke? The Vorthak representative's light pulses came through the pod communication system. That is a matter for official investigation by council security forces, not speculation by a human who has been in our society for less than 1 planetary rotation. Kade shrugged. Fair enough. Just making conversation while we plummet toward the ground in maintenance pods never designed for passenger transport. Speaking of which, Talrix, you might want to look away for this next part. Why would I want to look away? He pointed down. We were approaching a section of the rail where the magnetic track had been damaged, probably by the same explosion that started the fires. The gap was approximately 30 meters long. The pods would not be able to maintain their controlled descent through that gap. We were going to fall. Hold on to something, Kade suggested, his tone still absurdly casual. The pod hit the gap and dropped like a stone. My species does not have a digestive system prone to nausea, but I discovered in that moment that we absolutely can experience the sensation that humans call stomach dropping into your feet. The pod tumbled, the ground spinning in nauseating circles through the transparent panels. Kade hit 3 buttons in rapid succession, sending the pod into a spin that somehow stabilized our fall into something resembling a controlled tumble. He was using the pod's maneuvering thrusters, tiny directional jets meant for minor positioning adjustments, to steer our descent toward the next intact section of rail. It should not have worked. The thrusters were not designed for this. The pod was not designed for this. The entire situation violated approximately 47 different safety regulations. We hit the rail with a magnetic clamp that I felt through my entire skeletal structure. The pod shuddered, sparked, and somehow locked back onto the track. The controlled descent resumed as if we had not just experienced a near-death experience that would require therapy for most species. Kade checked the diagnostic panel. 5 pods still operational. All's good. We lost pod 6. Looks like their magnetic clamps failed on the gap. All they're in free fall. Can we help them? Ambassador Vrill's voice came through the communication system, distorted by interference, but still recognizable. Kade was already working the controls. Maybe if I can override the safety protocols and reverse our descent, we might be able to catch them. Going to need everyone to shift their weight to the rear of the pods. Trust me on this. Move now. We moved. Every being in every pod shifted position, responding to the command in Kade's voice without question or debate. The pods reversed direction, climbing back up the rail with acceleration that pressed me against the rear panel. Through the transparent floor, I could see pod 6 tumbling through the air, its occupants visible through the panels like insects trapped in amber. Come on, Kade muttered, adjusting our trajectory with micro-corrections that suggested he had done significantly more than read the manual on these systems. Come on, just a little closer. Our pod extended its maintenance grapple, a magnetic arm designed for retrieving cleaning equipment. Kade was using it to try to snag the falling pod, turning a rescue operation into something resembling a high-speed interception that would have made military pilots nervous. The grapple caught. The falling pod jerked to a sudden stop that probably caused severe discomfort to its passengers, but they were alive. Damaged, terrified, possibly traumatized, but alive. Pod. Kade resumed the descent, now towing the damaged pod alongside ours. Everyone still conscious? Good. We're about 200 meters from ground level. Barring any additional catastrophic failures, we should reach safety in approximately 90 seconds. The communication system crackled with a new voice. Station security forces, finally responding to the emergency. Unidentified pods, this is tower security. Reduce speed immediately and prepare for emergency interception. Negative. Tower security. Kade replied. We've got a damaged pod in tow and compromised magnetic systems. If we reduce speed, we lose the momentum keeping us stable. We're coming in hot. Clear the landing zone and have medical teams standing by. You do not have authority to disregard safety protocols. I have the authority of someone who just saved 47 council delegates from burning to death. Now clear the landing zone, or explain to your superiors why you let a bunch of diplomats become pavement decorations because you wanted to argue about protocol. The security officer wisely chose to clear the landing zone. We hit the ground with all the grace of a meteor strike. The pod's emergency cushioning systems deployed, which helped slightly. We still impacted hard enough that I tasted colors I did not know existed. But we were alive. Bruised, shaken, possibly suffering from various forms of trauma, but alive. Kade was out of the pod before it fully settled, already moving to help extract beings from the other pods. Whole medical teams swarmed the area, their equipment humming with diagnostic frequencies. Security forces established a perimeter, and through it all the summit chamber burned above us, a pillar of flame against the evening sky. I found myself standing next to the human, both of us watching the fire with the exhausted silence of beings who had survived something that should have killed us. So Kade said, eventually, about that test to prove humanity's worthiness for council membership. I'm thinking we might have just completed it. I made the sound that humans had taught me indicated agreement. Ambassador Merrick, I believe the council will be very interested in continuing our discussions about your species application. He smiled, and not the terrible smile from before. A different smile, tired, genuine, and perhaps just a little bit smug. Looking forward to it. Ambassador Talrix, though next time maybe we could have our diplomatic meetings somewhere with better fire safety systems. The investigation would later reveal that the assassination attempt had been orchestrated by a fringe group opposed to humanity's admission to the council. They had feared what our species might bring to galactic civilization, the chaos, the unpredictability, the refusal to accept limitations. They had been right to fear us, just not for the reasons they thought. Humanity brought all of those things, but we also brought something else, the ability to look at an impossible situation and refuse to accept impossibility as an answer, the willingness to extend friendship to beings we had just met, the instinct to save others before saving ourselves. Bit level. So, there's power that bay for gaze. There is either's too many bees. 3 standard cycles later, The council voted unanimously to grant humanity full membership. Kade Merrick became our permanent representative, a position he held with distinction for the next 40 years. But that first day, standing in the wreckage of what should have been a tragedy, watching rescue teams pull survivors from the rubble, I understood something fundamental about humans. They were not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but they were absolutely, without question, the most stubborn, and in a galaxy full of civilizations that had forgotten how to adapt, how to innovate, how to fight against impossible odds, that stubbornness might be exactly what we needed. Kade caught me staring at him. "Something on your mind, Ambassador?" "Just wondering," I said. "What other surprises your species has in store for us?" He laughed, that distinctly human sound that I was beginning to appreciate. "Oh, Talrix, you have no idea, we haven't even started showing you the really weird stuff yet." Somehow, that was both terrifying and strangely exciting. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, humanity. Try not to set anything else on fire."